Hello, good morning in the Pacific, good afternoon in Europe. It's Crossy's Corner with another amazing guest, Tricia Smith from Canada. Really grateful you could join us, Tricia. I know how busy that you are, and hopefully you've had, I know you're not a morning person, but I'm sure this will go really well. We go back.
Well, Martin, you've known me for how many years? My name is Tricia. It's not Patricia.
Yeah, okay, Tricia.
Marty.
Let's go back to those early days. What are your memories of starting out rowing as a young oarswoman?
Well, I came from a pretty active family. My parents were both athletes, and we were just did everything. And we lived near the ocean, so I think they thought we should all learn to swim. So we all started out as swimmers, actually. And I retired at the ripe old age of, I don't know, 15, 16 or something, as swimmers did in those days. Also because I had a younger sister, 4 years younger, who I knew she was going to beat me soon if I didn't find another sport. She actually ended up winning an Olympic medal in swimming at age 14, so that was probably a good move on my part. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So I was just, we lived near the university out here in Vancouver, and I was out using the library there for a high school. I was still in high school project, and a friend of mine who I'd known from swimming said, "Oh, you've got to come out and row." Actually, they needed an eighth person because the eighth person kept sleeping in, which was unbelievable to us. So we were very dependable. So I said, "What is that? What do you mean rowing?" I wasn't really sure. She said, "You know, Oxford and Cambridge." And I said, "Women do that?" She said, "Yeah, we've got a team." So we started out, and I found out later we were the first women who were allowed to row at the Vancouver Rowing Club. So it was pretty exciting for me, being in high school, rowing with a bunch of university students, and of course the men were all in university too, so that was exciting as well. So it was a lot of fun. Busy harbor where we rowed, and that was fun too. But yeah, and I mean, I loved it from day one.
Oh, what did you get? Were you in the '76 Olympics?
I was, yeah, with my younger sister, actually. Yeah, so I know years later we realized we both marched in the opening ceremonies together, but of course, you know, when you're sisters and you're 4 years apart, you don't walk together. And actually, my mother was there's my phone. My mother was also on the team as the assistant chef de mission. So again, years later, we realized, is that you in the front row in there? So the three of us were in the Olympics. Yeah.
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 So when did you make the breakthrough to medals, first of all?
Well, see, I started in '74, and so we made the '76 team. It was the first year for women at the Olympics, as you know.
It was, wasn't it?
Lot of firsts. And although at the time we didn't really think about it or realize, you know, of course women should be rowing. What's the big deal? But so it wasn't. It was in Amsterdam in 1977 when we won a bronze medal in the 8. Our coach was Korwanowski, and it was so exciting. We were so thrilled. It was really, really close too. So that was a big deal. I know as I'm thinking about some of the highlights of my career, and I think the first medal is always a highlight.
Yeah, that was a great championships and a really good party afterwards, I seem to recall.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think it was. I remember it was raining a lot. We were staying at the Hotel Cock, was it the Hotel Cock? And it was right by the Rijksmuseum. And I think there were at least 4 of us in one little room, and everything's hanging everywhere, you know, try and get dry. But yeah, it was a lot of fun for sure. Oh, you're right. It was at the 80 party. Anyways, yes, they generally had good parties in the Netherlands.
So Chris Korwanowski, that must have been quite a young Chris Korwanowski at that stage, I'm guessing.
Oh, we didn't think he was young, but I guess he was young. Because yeah, we were really fortunate to have had Chris as our coach. You know how he's in the boat with you, you know, and it was fabulous to have him, and actually coached us throughout my career. We would go and find him if he wasn't here in Canada.
Yeah, so that's quite interesting because you didn't stay in Canada. You actually went to Europe to train, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, after the first couple of years, there were no professional coaching jobs in Canada in the late 70s, early 80s. And so Chris ended up, he got hired by Princeton. And then he got a job in Italy with in the center with Tor Nilsson and Beppo Di Capua. Gianni Postiglione was there. I mean, it was just a great Franco Panagato. It was just a great crew. And so we didn't have a coach in Canada, and I was rowing in a pair then with Betts after the boycott in 1980. We, as you know, we boycotted. I was in the pair that year, and we were doing pretty well. And so we wrote Chris a letter, as you did in those days. So we wrote him a letter and sent it off and waited a few weeks, and we got a letter back. Yes, come. And so we made arrangements to go over and train in Italy. We did that for 2 seasons, and it was fantastic. The Italians were so good to us. We borrowed a boat initially, and then when we got our own boat over there, and so we were able to go to all the European regattas. We just got on the bus with the Italians, and as a Canadian, that's pretty unusual to go to all the regattas and really get to know your competitors. Usually you'd come over and you weren't really sure. I mean, you knew the East Germans were always going to be good no matter who was in the boat, but you didn't know how they raced. So during the season, you knew who went out fast, who came through in the middle. And so it was a great experience. Plus it was just fun. And, it was a training center that Tor Nilsson had set up, and his wife, Marie, of course, was a big part of that. And so you'd have other crews coming down, like Chris Bellew was training there, and Karppinen was there, and then Karppinen's brother, and then Ibarra was there. Who else came down? The Russians were there. Young, we'll think of it his name. Just a great group of athletes. So it was a lot of fun. We got to know each other really well, and like I say, traveling to the regattas on the bus with the Italians was also a great experience.
There's 2 things that just came up. The one about the boycott, and the second is about the training for the particular distance you raced in. Go first with the boycott. I know that had, I know the impact it had on your predecessor as World Rowing's vice president, Anita de France, and her attempts to overturn the boycott. What impact did that Moscow boycott have on you, Trish?
Well, we're the little cousin to our big neighbor to the south, and so we could see it happening. It was almost as if it was in slow motion. Someone would say this, and someone would say that, and it wasn't looking good for us. And so we were hoping all along that maybe we wouldn't follow the U.S. lead, but that was pretty unusual in those days. It was, days of the serious Iron Curtain, right? And so we sort of saw this happening, and then I think, as we saw the writing was on the wall, I started to think, well, a country was invaded and maybe we all have to do our part. And so trying to rationalize it in my head that way. But I have to say, as soon as it happened, and then of course the Olympics weren't on television, so it was as if they didn't happen. But then we realized we were the only ones. We were the only ones that did anything. So somehow on the backs of these young athletes, that was supposed to make all the difference. And in fact, when I got back to university in September, someone asked me how we'd done at the games.
Oh wow!
So yeah, it was pretty unbelievable. So how we are, we just sort of think, okay, that's the way it is, and you sort of get on the horse again and figure, okay, what are we going to do next year? But it was pretty devastating. It just taught me a lesson that boycotts, in that sense, they just don't work. And so there's rumblings about Beijing as well. And, we're not naive. There's the Olympic Games, there's a lot of things, a lot of layers around Olympic Games. And there's countries that use it, try and use it for to build their nation. I know when we had the games in 2010 in Vancouver, it united Canada behind the success of our athletes. And then there's countries that, want to espouse their values to the world, or they want to show how great they are to the world, or they want to build railways, or they want to build great new facilities. I mean, there's all sorts of things around the Olympics, good and bad. But for me, what it says is how powerful sport is, because all of those things, good and bad over the years, sports just survive that. And then when it gets right down to it, when it gets right down to the athletes and people coming together to play sport, basically to put down your swords and play together, it's a peace movement, really. And there's nothing like the Olympics. There's nothing like it that brings the world together, like 206 nations. Tell me what else there is. So I think we have to be careful about that and preserve that. So, I learned those lessons firsthand. And, you could say, well, it wasn't a very well run boycott. Well, I don't know. I don't think that should be your first reaction to an issue in a country.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Trish. And one of the things around Olympianism was a kind of a level playing field. Of course, what we know is that there were the state-sponsored drug regimes from Eastern Bloc countries, and I guess you racing 1,000 meters, because the men raced 2,000 and women, maybe it was thought they could only cope with 1,000 meters. I don't know, but you raced 1,000 meters, which would really mitigate, would be in favour of people that use steroids, a strength-based approach, and you were so close to medaling. You got the silver medal in Munich in 1981. What are your thoughts about as an athlete in that environment? Looking back on it now.
Yeah, 23 100s. Thanks for reminding me. That was really close. And we'd beaten them earlier in the season. I'll never forget the race when we beat them in Lucerne, because bets, we didn't say much. Of course, it's a sprint, right? And we always came from behind. And I could actually hear them gasping. And Bets goes, "We've got him!" It was such a great race. Anyways, as I've learned more about the sport, more actually when I retired and was chair of the Women's Commission, we did a history of women in sport. Amanda Schweinbenz wrote her thesis on it, and I learned more through that than actually living through it. But 1,000 meters was because they didn't think we could do 2,000. There were all sorts of reasons, but frankly, as a kid who grew up in a family where I was treated equally, I saw my parents, they were treated each other equally. I just thought 1,000 meters, great. I love the sprint, so I loved the 1,000 meters. And then I heard about the doping, and maybe these Germans were pretty good at 2,000 meters too. I think they're sort of an optimum size for a rower, maybe 180, 90 pounds, and of tall like that. And I think you're good at thousands and 2,000s with that. But we suspected, of course, that during those years, but we didn't have proof. And so you just got on with it. It was like you were rowing at that time too. When you beat the East Germans, that was pretty great. When you got on the podium with all the other Eastern Bloc countries, that was pretty great. And in fact, Bets and I were usually the only Western crew in the final for many years. And so he just did it. And, of course, it would be nice to have little asterisks beside that in a bit to explain to those in the future who don't understand that we were competing in those times. But I do remember, I competed in the last Commonwealth Games. So I'm still Commonwealth Games champion. Yeah, and we won, of course. It was sort of like, when's everyone going to arrive? And so we won the event, and we got the gold medal, and it was sort of nice. And it did make me realize, that was taken away from us. At least once, I would say, that was taken away from us by doping. But I do it again. We had so much fun. I love the sport. I love the people. I mean, the times that we had with you and your team. And I always tell people, we didn't have social media then, so we just meet on the stairs in Lucerne and we catch up on all the news and off we'd go. So. Yeah.
Great days. Do you remember making the switch from 1K to 2K, and how was that for you? Was it 1985, I think?
Yeah, it was actually in Lucerne. I remember coming off the water, and somebody from FISA came down and sort of, in a very offhand way, talked about, what do you think about racing 2,000 meters? And, Bets, my rowing partner, she probably said something like, "Bring it on," or something like that. And I just sort of, well, I don't know, I guess we could. And then I guess that was the consultation, because the next thing we knew, we heard we were racing 2000. So it's sort of like being I think it's sort of like being a 100-meter sprinter, and then them telling you, okay, now you do the 400.
Yeah.
They're such different races. Like I say, the 1000, painful for sure, but it was really exciting. Every single stroke, you know what you're going to do, and I loved that race. 2000, it took me a while just to figure out what to do with all those extra 250s in the middle, So, but I liked it. It was definitely a big shift.
Yeah. And of course, there's lots of talk now, particularly about with the Los Angeles course in 2028 of making rowing a shorter distance. I mean, I guess we've had 2K for so long, it feels like that's almost sacrosanct. But what's your take on that? And what do you think will happen with the distance in rowing?
Yeah, I've learned to love the 2000. But you've got to admit that over the years, the best place to watch a 2000-meter race is in the commentator car. Where you can actually see the moves of every single. Okay, he's going to go now, or she's going to go now. Okay, there she goes. You don't get that. You didn't get that as well. But I think now with the drones and the better technology and the better graphics, and the big screens and so on, you are able to get that feeling. So I think our challenge in the past is telling the story of the 2000-meter race and getting it across to people. I think the other thing, and everyone in FISA, World Rowing, will roll their eyes, but we need headsets, so everyone can hear the commentators in your own language, and we should be able to do that, I think, with the technology we have. But I think, I think the flexibility is really important, maybe 1,500 to 1,000 or something like that, to give us more flexibility to use other courses around the world, as long as it keeps a certain length. Because I'll just say the sprints are interesting, but it doesn't have the development of the race the way that that we love in rowing. So I think there's a real push to maintaining at least 1,500 to 2,000.
Yeah. Do you think it's really important that rowing does show flexibility about the distance, just in terms of of saying every Olympic Games rowing needs a new 2,000-meter course? I think rowing now within the IOC needs to show more flexibility around the distance and make rowing more cost effective.
Yeah, I think that is a good thing, to be flexible. And then, as you know, we're talking about that in LA. That course would be just fantastic. It was the original course, of course, from the 30s, but it would be fantastic because it's right down by the beach. It's right in the center of everything. Lots of spectators on both sides. And I think, we'll be able to have 6 lanes in there, but if it was 6 lanes, then it would be a 1,500-meter course. There's a bridge across it as well, so it should have some great viewing. And I think that would be embraced by the IOC, and it would be good for rowing.
Yeah. With your rowing hat on and your Olympic hat on, that there are a lot of pressures on rowing now, particularly with the numbers involved, because rowing is the 3rd largest sport in the Olympics, and it's quite an easy target for the IOC to look at rowing and say, oh yeah, rowing can cut a few numbers. But we're kind of reaching a tipping point, in terms of the numbers that rowing can cut to hold a kind of proper regatta over a week or so. What's your view? What's your take on that, Tricia?
Yeah, no, Tricia's fine. I think the IOC is understanding that they love the 8s too. So, I mean, generally people who don't know rowing, when are the 8s on? So when you start to explain to them, okay, if you have 8s, that means this number, and it's just a matter of education. So I think, we've given up some more numbers from Paris, but I think they know that in order to have a meaningful regatta, we have to have a certain number. And rowing is well respected in the Olympic movement, and I think that's because of the great people that we've had in the IOC. And Denny did a great job, and Anita's there, and of course Jean-Christophe is there. There's John Coates is there, and now I'm there. There's we try and sort of stay below the radar a little bit. There's quite a few of us. And so it has a good reputation, I think, in the Olympic movement, and people do respect the sport.